Since July the 14th, adults travelling to Malta who've not been fully vaccinated must quarantine for 2 weeks. We're joined now by Eoghan Corry, editor of Air and Travel magazine. Eoghan, good morning.
Good morning from beautiful sunny Straffan, Pat. Good morning to you.
As warm as Malta, I would suspect, in Straffan today. Now, Eoghan, the Maltese have actually laid it out when you dig deep as to what the rules are for entering Malta. But I went on the EU Reopen app this morning and it doesn't really tell me what I found if I dug more deeply. So what's going on?
First of all, to correct it, you are allowed in with the digital COVID certificate. That is the famous QR code that so many people have got since Monday of last week. If you have that on your phone, you have no restrictions travelling into Malta. Malta is a little bit different from other countries. They don't accept a test. That means no antigen, no PCR. They also have said they don't want children. There's quite a few people listening this morning would probably see that as a bonus. So what happened yesterday was 6 people arrived off the flight from Dublin and they didn't have the digital COVID certificate with the QR code, but they had the vaccination card. Now, this is reflective, Pat, of what's been happening across Europe. There's been an acceptance that Ireland has a lot of people waiting for the email with the code, and they have been through the full course of vaccination. Remember, since Monday, everybody through the full course and children under 12 can travel without restriction. People have been getting into Spain, Portugal, Greece, Italy with the card signed saying this is your vaccination date and this is the batch number. Malta have not decided or are not doing that. So the 6 people who arrived on the flight with instead of the digital COVID certificate, they had the card signed. They were told not here. So they've gone into mandatory hotel quarantine and now they can rebook a flight, but they will be escorted and watched and put back on the flight. And of course, they're subject to the re-entry negotiations when they come to Ireland. That isn't the biggest problem in the world when they have their vaccination card. Yeah. It all relates to the slow rollout of the digital COVID certificate. This wouldn't have happened if they'd all been delivered in time. And the second thing is, Malta is an aberration to what's been happening right across Europe. People are getting on. We've got something like 20,000 people in the airport today. People are getting on with the signed card instead of the digital COVID certificate, and they're being allowed on and they're being allowed into the countries to which they're going. Spain, for instance, generates a separate QR code from your entry form. So all the systems are working, but Malta was an aberration.
Yeah, now it's funny that Malta, it seems, recognises the National Health Service COVID pass letter. Yes. Or the NHS app. Now, there are strong affinities between Malta and the UK. I mean, their second language is definitely English. So maybe they just need to get familiar with the Irish
it's a separate thing,
document.
Pat. Red post boxes, all of that. Malta, very British. The Queen of England spent her time in her childhood there. They feel great affinity with England. But the NHS card, and this is very significant for our listeners north of Newry, that the NHS card is being treated like the digital COVID certificate right across Europe. But it's not under the EU scheme. It's a series of bilaterals that were signed by the British government with nearly all the European states, including Malta. So it's a separate recognition process. Now, there is another Spain, Portugal, Greece, Cyprus, all of those countries have signed those bilaterals. So anyone travelling from Belfast with the NHS COVID card will get the same recognition as someone with the digital COVID certificate. There is a big difference between them, and it's an important one considering the age group we're dealing with. If you're flying from Ireland, everybody can print out their email with the QR code. That's scanned at the airport and it's scanned by immigration. They're the 2 places they will check it. There isn't a facility for the printed paper version in Northern Ireland or in Britain. So it's all digital there. So that is creating a few problems, particularly with the older age group, which are the vaccinated, the first to be vaccinated.
Now, I'm not entirely sure of these stats because I was reading that 82% of the Maltese population have had a first jab, and 88% have had a first jab, 82% a second jab. That probably is of the adult population, because, as we know, they are not vaccinating toddlers and children and all the rest of it. They've a high vaccination rate, though, among the adult population. But yet, when you go on the EU Reopen app and go to Malta, it's covered basically in a dark brown colour, which means that the rate of infection is very high. So you've got two conflicting things: high infection rates in the population, who are now deemed to be susceptible to it, but most of the population vaccinated. I'm a bit confused.
It's quite confusing, because if you were to go into that same map 3 weeks ago, Malta was one of the best. Malta had a rate of about 4. It floated up to about 122. We've seen that happen in our country. It happens more dramatically in countries with smaller populations. The Isle of Man was a really good example of what happened there. It went from low to very high. Now, what that does, as we are well familiar with in our country, is when the numbers float up, everybody becomes stricter in their enforcement of things. And Malta had a policy last July of opening up to international travel on this measured, secure, tested basis. And when the numbers floated up, they rode back on that policy. So what we've seen in Malta is this enthusiasm for reopening, but also this, because their cases went up, but most of it is not related. Some of it's related to parties, the sort of thing that we have here. But remember, there's a separate issue in Malta, which is that they always have an influx of migrants arriving from North Africa. And the debate, the narrative all about COVID in Malta is a bit more complex than here. But the pattern is very much, we went from one of the lowest in Europe to 122. Let's be very, very careful and very measured. And that probably contributed to 6 people who had the paper cert of vaccination. They're not any more danger than the people with the digital COVID certificate, but they're coming home, or they're in quarantine till they get home.
All right. Anyway, they seem to have added more capacity to the helpline, so let's hope that will iron out a lot of the problems. And also, we were told that everything would be posted by last Thursday in terms of COVID certs, but certainly mine hasn't arrived, and I've been second vaxxed for several weeks now, so I don't know what's the hold up. Anyway, quick one for you before you go.
Absolutely.
Can you ask Eoghan what to do regarding PCR? My daughter's travelling from the UK to Dublin. She's getting final Pfizer on 27th of July, but travelling just a few days later on the 1st of August. Also, does the 8-year-old son need a PCR? I can't find clear info online, particularly about her jab being so close to travel.
It is extraordinary. We have 2 contradictory pieces of information on the same gov.ie website. The answer is the 8-year-old is clear to travel without a test. The test is still required 5 days after the second jab. PCR test available from private operators, but also in pharmacies in England, Boots. But make sure it's the PCR and not the antigen test.
All right, Eoghan, thank you very much for joining us.
Always a pleasure, Pat.